Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Athletics Check. I am Anthony Deneau, along with Tyler Lambert and Michael Feuerbach, and we are here to talk about all things D&D and sports and
Hell
whatever
yeah.
else comes our way.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, Tyler, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay, man. I had quite the week at work. Um, Getting really stoked to start this thing. I bought my new microphone for it. Hope I sound okay to everybody. Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you, man?
I'm doing great as well. Michael, what about you? How you doing?
I'm just excited to be here. I can't wait to talk about all things D&D and learn all things sports because I am a tiny babe of knowing things of sports.
Same.
So yeah, that kind of brings us, I guess, to the premise and what this show is about and what we're
Mhm.
doing. And I guess you guys will be enlightening me about the world of D&D, and I will be bringing you guys into the world of sports. And so we have a lot to learn from each other and lots to talk about, and we're not really sure what the show is exactly yet, but I think we're going to figure out pretty soon. But
Yeah.
I'm excited to do it regardless.
Yeah, it
Role
was a
playing
great idea.
games. Yeah.
It was a great idea that kind of sprung up out of nowhere of just Michael and I spinning and talking about D&D in an endless cycle while we're at March Madness. And you're like, I kind of want to know this world. I'm like, great, because I know nothing about sports, and this is a great idea. It was kind of your idea to say, hey, let's start a podcast around it. I think it's brilliant because sports have always been around, obviously, and I go to football games and whatnot, or like watch football sometimes on the back in the background at the Super Bowl or whatever. But man, I don't know anything about it. I know there's points, and I know that there's winning,
Sure.
and I know a little bit about baseball and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's about it, man.
Okay.
I played football in high school, so I know that sport pretty intimately, and I watched other sports, but I didn't grow up in a household that was super into it,
Hmm.
you know? Like my parents didn't have like a favorite team and didn't like root for anything in particular, so I just cuz was very like I played it and like that was interesting and my friends were into it, but I never got raised up and like brought into it really. So,
Well, let's
yeah.
talk a little bit about that because I think where you're from and how you grew up is a big part of kind of our backgrounds as to where we're at with the knowledge of each other's
Yeah.
interests, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
We all bond over music. That was our first and foremost. That's what originally brought us all
yeah.
together. So I'm
Crazy.
sure that will be a big piece of the show as well. What we're listening to, what we're into, all sorts of stuff. But so Michael, you said, and I find this. So you're from Oregon, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay,
Born and raised in Oregon,
there
not
we go.
Oregon. Oregon.
Well, it's funny that you say Oregon because
Yeah.
I'm from Wisconsin, where we have a city called Oregon. So
No
everyone,
What?
way.
when I tell them I'm moving to Portland, Oregon, they're like, "Oh, Oregon, the state." I'm like, "Yes, but it's actually Oregon."
It's a state,
And
Oregon.
not a shape.
yes, so people, I always have to explain that.
Yeah.
But I think that you being from Oregon, the state, has a lot to
Hmm.
do with you not necessarily having a team directly involved. Like
True.
I
Yeah.
think there's a correlation there, and I because I find that with a lot of people from Oregon.
I have
That's
strong
true.
opinions on the Civil War, which is our big thing here as far as football goes. And I think I should be more into the Trailblazers, but again, just kind of like maybe a certain distance from that, it just didn't have the closeness to that one. But
And also the soccer team.
and also the Thorns, and also the what are they called? The Timbers.
The
Yeah, that's right.
Timbers, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And when you
I
say the
got that.
Civil War, you're talking about Oregon State versus Oregon football
Yeah,
matchup once a year, which is
U of
usually
O.
around
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, correct? If I'm
Ducks.
not mistaken.
Probably. I mean, yeah, that sounds like football season to
Okay.
me. So yeah, I think
Ducks and
that's about right.
beavers. Ducks and
Beavers and
beavers.
Versus
that's
Beavers.
right.
Yeah.
That's
I do
right.
know something about
Very
sports.
well done. Tyler, tell us where you're from and kind of your allegiance to any, I guess, team or anything related to
Sure.
where you're
Yeah.
from.
No, I got ties in baseball for sure. I'm from originally from the San Francisco Bay Area, California. My family was hard Mets, not Mets. I say Mets because I had a dream about the Mets last night, strangely enough. But they're hard Yankees fans
Yeah.
because most of my family's from New York. But being in the Bay, I also like the Giants and the A's. I don't really choose over them. I like both of their stadiums. But mostly went to go watch them play against the Yankees when that happened. Grew up playing some T-ball for probably 3 years or so. And kind of almost signed up for the high school football team, but then I talked myself out of it. I got peer pressured into it, kind of. So I signed up, and then I didn't show up to any of the things.
Okay.
So I almost played football. My life was almost entirely different, but then instead I went to the theater department and kind of became a nerd, and then eventually moved up to Oregon a few years ago. Yeah, 2018 or so.
There you go. Okay.
That's me. I'm curious. I'm really curious to know what your relationship to tabletop games are, like D&D or
sports.
anything,
I
or
wanna know
board
sports,
games. Yeah, and your relationship to sports, obviously, because it's a way more of a background than we have. Yeah.
Okay, for sports is something. So being from Wisconsin, it's just it just seems to be ingrained in us in so many ways. Whether it be the Green Bay Packers, we also have a professional baseball and professional basketball team, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Milwaukee Brewers. The Milwaukee Brewers, best logo and best team name in sports, if you ask me. I am biased. And then I'm also from the capital city in Wisconsin, which is Madison, and so being in a big college town with a big downtown that's really revolves around the major state school, University of Wisconsin. My dad had season tickets to Wisconsin football growing up. We have a very unique and kind of a legendary stadium that's been around over 100 years. It's called Camp Randall, and it was I believe it's called that because it was it does have relations to either the Civil War or World War One, where that's where they were training troops. I believe I almost want to say the Civil War, so it's been around. I mean, a
Real Civil War, the
long
real
time.
American
The
Civil
real,
War.
yeah,
Oh,
not the Civil War that Michael referenced earlier, but like
Yeah.
the American
Please
Civil
clarify
War.
which
Yes,
Civil
yeah,
War.
yeah, we'll have to get
Not
that
a
out.
sports Civil War. Yeah.
Yes.
Fair
But
enough.
growing up, and then basketball is really my main love. Like, that is my passion. I have done everything there is to do with the sport of basketball. I have played from when I was a child up through, even as an adult into my 30s. And was a referee for over a decade. I was a
that's
scout.
cool.
I was a trainer, traveling teams. I was a coach. My favorite thing that I've ever done was actually doing play-by-play announcing for TV and radio for a high school near my hometown,
Amazing.
Madison. So that
Amazing.
was the favorite thing. Like, I would say that's like my favorite thing that I've even done in radio was doing play-by-play for basketball, and that
Love
was.
that.
So I really have done. If you name it in basketball, I have done it. So
That's
that's
really-
really my main sport. But I can still help give you guys some knowledge on other things going on in sports when it comes to football and baseball.
What called you more to basketball than anything else?
I would partially I didn't love the physicality of football, but basketball in Wisconsin you can play year round. I could play summer ball outside with friends at camp, and then indoors in winter you can go to the gym and play. And that's a good question. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but it was at a young age that basketball was my number one thing, and had a little hoop in my grandparents' basement and just watching Michael Jordan as a kid, and
that's what
just
I was
fell in
gonna
love
say
with
too.
NBA.
Being named Michael and growing up during the 90s was like basketball was the thing. What it felt like like Michael Jordan and basketball in the 90s was even bigger than football at the time. It felt like that could just be a perspective thing, but it was huge. Michael Jordan was a huge figure during that time. So makes sense.
Yeah, true. Space Jam, right?
Space Jam.
Space Jam. He played baseball. He was the face of Nike. Basketball players, because they're not wearing hats or helmets, and there's less players on the team. I think that is a big reason why. But I would agree with you. If he was, he would. It'd be hard to argue that he wasn't the number one athlete of the 90s.
Yeah,
and someone that you could anyone in the world would probably recognize and know who Michael Jordan is, and to the point where it's 30 plus year 20 plus years after he retired, and it's, if you were to say basketball, people would say three names, and it's at least in this era they would say Kobe, LeBron, and they would still say Michael Jordan, and then
Larry
also
Bird. Oh.
there,
Steph Curry.
Steph Curry, absolutely. Curry's
See, I have
right up there.
I have a little bit of with Steph Curry because of Golden State and being from the San Francisco Bay. And when I was down there, they were winning the last couple of years. They won, like, I don't know, maybe 3 years in a row or something crazy like that.
3 out
The
of 4 years.
3 out of 4 years, yeah, they were killing it, and they had parades going on. My friend was actually able to get in one of the parades. Just because, I don't know, he had some friends that were in the business or whatever, but like, it was just such a big deal, and I just remember seeing the camaraderie around it. And one of my biggest questions was going to be, I don't know how to address this, but like, isn't there? I don't know how to ask it, but isn't it crazy how, like, at a certain level, winning in sports actually changes the economy of the place where it's happening? Because I noticed when the Giants were winning, they won like every other year in the 2010s, maybe 2010, 20,
3 and 5 years.
3 and 5 years. Then the Warriors were winning. It was just like, it seems like there's actually like an economic change or boom.
I think there's something to that. When a team is doing well, it like drives business to that area.
Right.
You know, like when the Ducks are doing well, like there's more business going to Eugene to see them, you know,
To see
do
them play.
well. When the Trailblazers are doing well, you know, more people want to go see them play. You know, like Damian Lillard as the Trailblazers, I think does like a lot, like brings a lot of people to watch things at the Moda Center. So I also wanted to ask Anthony, how do you feel about hockey? Being from
So
the
this is
Midwest there.
Yeah, so this
Kind
is
of a
kind
big
of a
fan.
tough one. I enjoy hockey. I still don't fully understand it, but I always loved it. And the state school, University of Wisconsin, our college hockey team is sort of what Duke basketball is to basketball, is what Wisconsin hockey is to college hockey. Like they
All right,
are
it lost
one
me a
of
little bit. Yeah.
the blue bloods. Well, in college basketball, you think of
Like a feeder college, like they
no,
like
like I'm saying, when you think of college basketball, you think of Duke and UConn and some of
mm,
these major schools. When it comes to college hockey, University of Wisconsin is one of those blue bloods, like one of the main things you think of.
Hmm.
But because we didn't have a professional team, I never got super interested in the NHL.
there's
It's
no team for Wisconsin?
Exactly. This is very funny. So in 1988, 1989, they were building a stadium. It was to be a basketball stadium or arena for the Milwaukee Bucks, but also with the idea that they would get an NHL team. They were battling with another city for that NHL team. That NHL team that was supposed to be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, ended up being the Phoenix Coyotes in Arizona.
No.
So so that was supposed to be our team.
Awful.
And we even built an arena with the idea that, oh, we'll have an NHL team here,
Oh
and
no.
that
I
never
had no
never
stake in
happened.
this race and now I'm upset.
Yeah.
I know, I'm very
Talk
frustrated.
about night and day. Now we hate Arizona, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you don't think, nobody thinks of hockey when they go to Arizona. I don't know. It's just it's
No.
very
Yeah.
silly
I
to
don't
me.
think of hockey when I'm in the Southwest or South at all because it shouldn't exist down there. And yet there are so many teams that play hockey
Yeah.
down there. That's my
Yeah.
hot take on
I,
hockey.
I
It
don't
should
think
remain
about
in the North.
yeah,
Hockey
I
for
don't
the
think about
North.
hockey. Yeah. I don't think about hockey, period. I don't think San Jose Sharks are a thing though. And I'm aware of that. And I used to enforce the streets with parking
Yeah.
laws near their Coliseum or whatever.
Nice.
That's
Writing
one of my
tickets.
jobs.
Las
Hell
Vegas
yeah.
Golden Knights have a cool logo.
Yeah.
Golden Knights. It's a very good crossover of D&D and sports for me.
Oh, Gold Knights is a great segue, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gold Knights because knights are in Dungeons and Dragons. Sure.
Sure. Yeah. I'll take any in that I can
Well,
get.
bring me into this. I don't know what the hell you guys are talking
Sure.
about. So
Well, we
tell
should
me
start
about.
with what we planned was rolling our vibe check.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
should do this with 20-sided die, but we're just gonna roll it, and all it is reading the number out loud and telling each other the number. It really
High
doesn't
is
have any
good.
significant value. High is generally in D&D better. You want to roll
Yeah.
high to succeed at things. So we'll roll at the same time. and tell each other the numbers and make nothing of it. Ready?
Okay.
Let's go.
It'll determine everything about how this podcast goes.
I see. I got a hot 4.
Oof.
I got an
Let's
E.
hear it.
Oh, that's a 3.
Okay.
On a scale of 1 to 12, I got an E.
I didn't understand when I got into this. You couldn't count.
Yeah.
You harder than I thought.
Okay, gonna rethink my approach here. I got an 8, which means I beat all of you, and
Yeah, that's true.
so I'm
That
gonna
means
do the best.
That also means that you are better than our efforts combined.
Yeah,
I guess
Oh,
if you want to
sad.
read it that way. But yeah.
yeah.
Um,
A vibe check is like astrology for like RPG nerds. It means nothing, but you can read a lot into it for sure.
yeah, you could definitely make some bullshit out of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what do I read into my 3?
3 is less than mine.
Yeah.
I'm the low man on the totem pole.
You could read it one of two ways. One is, oh, thank God we got that out of the way. You know,
Yeah.
that was a
Yeah.
3 you were gonna roll later, you know, when it meant more. So you
Oh.
got rid of it now during the vibe check, which it doesn't mean much. Or, oh no, I rolled a 3. Now my night is going to be
Now my vibe is 3 out of 12 for the entire night.
Now my
It's no
vibe
longer it's no
Yeah.
longer a golden night.
yeah, it's no
It's no
exactly.
longer
Woo, we did
golden
it.
night.
Got
Alright.
Full
we got
circle.
there.
Yeah. So yeah, the vibe check means nothing, but D&D tends to work around the dice. Also in the 80s, it was the 80s, early 80s, I guess, for a history check on
History
on
check.
Gary Gygax, I guess.
D&D was invented in 1974.
There you go. Not even the
The
80s.
same year as Star Wars, I think.
Yeah, like the early stuff of it. And
Yeah,
then Gary
very
Gygax
early.
got
Yeah,
famous, and then Stranger Things made the 80s famous again.
yeah.
Now D&D is becoming a thing again. But from what I understand, they developed this game that works around dice. Basically, anytime you have a challenge of 2 things, there's a dice roll and a difficulty class to meet, which is a predetermined number in which levels in difficulty. So
Yeah. I'd love to talk about like the differing approaches that each edition of D&D has also taken to the game, you know, because it's really been it had different focuses throughout its history, you know, because it's a game that's been around for 50 years at this point, or close to 50 years.
And yeah, you'll definitely hear us talking a lot about fifth edition D&D.
Yeah.
Means there's gone through more than 5 iterations basically. But the 5th edition that's been released is like, hey, this is brand new, start from scratch. We want you to play like this, or you can't play like this.
Little rework.
And a lot of rework, and that's where Michael kind of had the beef with the original name of this podcast, being Athletics Check. He says it's a very 5th edition thing.
It kind of is in a way. I mean, it's a D&D thing, you know. Specifically, Athletics Check kind of refers to something in D&D. But I mean, they had similar checks. They just weren't specifically called that in other previous games. And I mean, other games, RPGs have that too. It's fine. I just, you know, if we say, oh, this is our first episode, but we want to do this for 10 years, you know, maybe the game's going to be very different by then.
And they won't have Athletics Check anymore.
They
and our
won't.
lives
They
will be
won't use
ruined.
that. Yeah, it'll be called like a strength check or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So 5th edition is sort of like the newest Windows, or the newest
Newest
iTunes
it's the current edition.
are
it's the current iTunes of Dungeons and Dragons, and they just do it like changing rules, or like what I found about 5th edition D&D compared to what I used to play is usually 4th edition. 5th edition made combat a lot faster or simpler, so that it became more approachable. Everybody's going to have a different opinion about that, about what the differences are between 3.5 and 4 and 5. But they always are trying something new, and you'll watch as they're beta testing stuff for like this new D&D thing that's coming out, and it's constantly changing.
A new one, yeah. They're
Constantly
testing
changing
a new
and adjusting rules.
Edition, but not edition. They want to make it like backwards compatible, but they're testing Wizards of the Coast, which is the parent company for D&D and other things like Magic the Gathering. They are testing a new. They're trying different things out. They're seeing what works and what they might update the game, because fifth edition, it's the newest edition, but it also came out in like 2013 or 2014, so it's getting pretty long in the tooth at this point. And some people are hankering for something new in the D&D world, you know. And like the state of the game and the state of the meta of the game sometimes has changed a lot during that decade. So
Yeah, but I think the overall thing, the thing that hasn't changed is the storytelling element of D&D,
yeah.
the fun of the dice rolling, and getting results, and ultimately becoming this great hero, and definitely tripping and falling and failing along the way based on your poor dice rolls or whatever. But it's like a very involved experience where you get to step into a character's shoes, have
Well, I want
you
to
know,
ask Anthony, uh, we could explain D&D probably baseline as much as you'd like, but how much do you know already? What is your relationship to RPGs and D&D uh, before all this happened?
Um, gosh. Okay, so I know very little, and that's part of the premise of why we're
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah.
I guess it's something I had heard about and known from nerd lore, I suppose. But
Sure.
my introduction, my biggest introduction to it would have been when I was a kid and watching the show Freaks and Geeks. From like
Mm,
it came out in probably 1999. They didn't show
yeah.
all the episodes in order, but there's one of the major episodes near the end. And it takes place in 1980. A lot of famous actors who weren't necessarily famous at the time, but went on to have to be just superstars of Hollywood, basically.
yeah.
And there's an episode where I think it's even called Dungeons and Dragons, where one of the kind of punk rockers or music players gets involved with the nerds and gets like stuck on the AV club, and they decide to show him D&D, and he gets really into it, and that's kind of a big change in character arc from what we would expect from this character. And so that was kind of the original thing. That And then when I went from Catholic school to high school, I had friends who played it. Once again, friends who I played music with. And I
Mm.
did get to play one time. It was kind of after a night of drinking or a day of drinking. And we can get into that story a whole nother time.
Sure.
But then the Weezer song In the Garage, I believe, starts with the lyrics, I've got a 12-sided die. I've got a Dungeon Master's Guide. And
Is
Ah,
it
so,
really? I had no
yeah,
idea.
yeah, I've got it. It's pretty great.
What nerds?
It is, and then it talks about Night Pride or Kitty Pride and Nightcrawler, and then gets into the
oh,
band Kiss, and it's a great
nice.
nerd song about being in the
Absolute.
garage, and
They're
it's
absolute dorks.
yeah,
That's great. I
for
love
sure.
Weezer.
And that's funny
I love
because
Weezer.
they and I don't know if they invented the term, but the term nerd rock was coined for or
Oh, that makes
because of
sense.
Weezer.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
no, that
They
makes sense.
are
I see that.
they are the reason I believe that term exists,
They are
as
the
far as
Reezer
I
for
know.
the Weezer.
You're
Yeah.
damn right. You're damn skippy they are.
I'm just skipping.
Um, but I've always been into board games and playing games with groups of people, whether it be trivia games or other Trivial Pursuit or uh pardon
Wouldn't
me,
even know.
seen it.
Yeah.
What are you drinking over
Anything you
there?
can think of. I've got so it's a cherry limeade that I got from a certain
Ooh, cherry
drive-through.
limeade from Sonic.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's nice.
nice.
That's the
And
Can I
good
then
stuff.
just point out real quick that smooth ass segue of hey, let me talk and then cough and then hey, that's what are you drinking over there?
yeah.
I do want to
Yeah,
know what we're drinking, but I just need to also
I
go
thought I.
full halt for this segue.
No,
Yeah,
that was a good one.
thanks for dead stopping my segue, dude. I thought I was doing so good. I was like, oh, he coughed. Oh, he could probably take a drink right now. Okay, I'm
Okay.
gonna be like, hey, what are you drinking over there? And then you just full stop. Like, let's
Yeah.
examine the meta. Thank
I
you.
feel like we should keep talking about it.
So inside of my cherry limeade, I've also dumped in some Rose City vodka, local vodka here. We're doing
Nice.
the show in just outside of Portland, Oregon. We're in our separate
PNW.
places for those of you who are hearing and not getting to watch this
Oh, you're on the other side
blasphemy.
of this door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just
So we're all in the Hillsboro area, just west of Portland, Oregon.
Yep.
And I got some Rose City vodka that I put in my cherry limeade for to enjoy with the show. What are you guys drinking?
I got the bee's knees from Stickman Brewing Company. I don't know anything about them, but this is pretty good. I'd
What
say
kind of drink is it?
it's an ale with honey, and that's how it markets itself. Just says ale with honey, a pilsner malt.
Very
It's
nice.
smooth and drinkable, and I agree. It's pretty good.
I picked up an Ecliptic Brewing. It's a seasonal grapefruit hazy IPA called Parsec. Always like Ecliptic. And
I do too.
later, I have this Kolsch style non-alcoholic beer.
Ooh, round two. What do you got to roll to get that one?
That's going to be a 15 or higher.
My die only
That's
goes
the
up to 12.
default.
Yeah,
That's the
15 is a
default.
good. 15 is a good.
I'm
This
on
is-
third edition,
yeah.
I guess, with my 12.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got 20s. We got 20 sided over here.
I do. I have a D20.
That's kind of like the baseline, at least for fifth ed. But
Yeah.
well, they honestly sometimes require the whole 7 dice polyhedral set or whatever.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, I don't even know what that means.
It means there's 7
many
different
sided.
die, and some of them are different denominations.
He's
I
got
have
his
just
whole-
a bag of dice here
Yeah,
that I'm just
hold
going to
this.
pull out and show you. These are my reds and oranges.
Oh my god.
But you'll have stuff like your D8 or your 8-sided die.
Oh, I love
You
the
have,
orange with the white lettering. That's good.
So
D4,
Definitely dice goblins here too.
4-sided dice if you're like stabbing someone with a dagger, usually in 5th edition or
Or
smaller.
if you need to run away, you can just throw those on the ground.
sounds
You can
very
absolutely just throw
violent.
them.
Very
Like
violent.
Yeah, so they have all kinds of different things. So more powerful things use higher weapon die, and so they'll do more damage because, well,
Yeah.
technically be able to do more damage, but they require all kinds of things. There's 100-sided die with 2d10s in case you need a very low probability of something happening.
And that's
So
a
it
very
really
gamer
depends.
thing too, to call it like a D20 or a D10 rather than a 6-sided die or just dice. You know,
Yeah.
normal people just call dice like the cubes dice, and then
Yeah.
but RPG gamers and people like that would be like, no, that's a D6. You know, there's other dice like out there. You got to
Yeah.
differentiate them from. So
That's right.
that's how you can. That's like a Inglorious Bastards, like one
I
of
know
these versus
exactly
this.
what you're talking about. I
You know, it's like,
exactly
oh,
what
this
you
is
mean.
how normal people,
Hold up
quote
a
unquote.
Oh, we don't say
Yeah.
normal.
The
Oh,
English
American.
were the normal people.
Yeah. So for those of you who are listening and not watching, Michael's talking about the difference in how you hold up 3 and when meaning 3 fingers and the differences between them. And in Inglorious Bastards, there was
Famous
people who
scene.
were basically Nazi spies or spies posing as Nazis,
Yeah.
and they were outed by using the wrong finger sign to say they wanted 3 drinks or something along those lines.
Yeah. I
Huge
think they
nation.
held up their pointer finger, their middle finger, and their ring finger, which is like the English way to order 3
Yes.
drinks, as opposed to the German way, which is your thumb, your pointer, and your middle finger.
And if I'm not
And-
mistaken, so it's great that you brought that up. I just watched a Tarantino documentary called The First 8, and it was
Mhm.
leading up to the movie
Hollywood. Once upon a time.
Thank you. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So,
You're
and
just
it
talking about
was
Tarantino today.
and it's a great documentary. It's on Tubi right now called The First 8, and
That's cool.
it just brings in people talking about the movies, people from the movies, and talking about his writing style, his directing style. It's just that's something I would totally
That's
tell people
beautiful.
to check out. And
love that.
there's a callback on that, I think, in Hateful
Yeah.
Eight as well. But anyway,
that's cool.
we can
It's
talk about
a great
Tarantino.
scene. It's a great
Yes,
scene because it's super
yes.
tense, you know, that whole thing. And then but yeah, like in that scene where you can definitely like immediately tell the difference between someone in your group and someone in a different group. If you say, you know, oh, I need dice, you know, and you're just expecting a 6-sided die, or you say I need a D6 or a D20, then
They're
or
on
if
the nerd level.
it's a different level. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You can identify someone.
I think I have a great segue, and I'm going to point light at it because it's going to be such a good segue. And the point of this podcast is to bring those two different tables together, right? So if I say D6 and I'm obviously a nerd, we're talking to the sports table who are talking about touchdowns and how they're worth 6 points, I think, sometimes, but you can kick maybe.
I think they're worth D6 points. Yeah.
D6 worth of points. But like the idea of joining those, so it doesn't matter if you hold your fingers with these three or those three, you know.
Yeah.
We're
Or if
segueing
you
this
have
all
no
together to
fingers.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. I think I was actually, when I was buying my mic the other day, this is the one guy I told about the name, not the name of our podcast, but what our podcast was about, was the guy at Best Buy, who was like, what do you need a mic for? You play Call of Duty? And I'm like, no. He's like, cool, you don't need the code then. And he's like, no, really, what are you using it for? And I'm like, I'm starting a podcast. He's like, cool, what's your podcast about? And I told him, and he's like, that's not a group of people I would expect to listen to the same podcast. And I said, that's exactly why we're making it.
Bigger than you think.
That is our point. It is. We're bringing the sports people here. We're bringing the D&D people here, and we're saying you guys can love each other. Nerds and jocks. That's old news. We're all nerds for sports, or we're nerds for
that was
dragons.
me.
And I think you said that too. It's just like we're all nerding out. Nerding out about this stuff. And it's
my
just
nickname on the football team was Dungeon Master because I wouldn't shut up about how much I love D&D to all my jock friends.
I love that. I love that.
That was legit my nickname on the, and actually, well, now I want to tell the story of the one time my football coach asked me to prepare a spell list to help us win an upcoming game.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So high school football, our team was not good. We didn't win.
We didn't win both offense and defense, right?
Yeah, we had a pretty small team because we were a newer school, and so we didn't have a whole lot of people. So we played. I would play the entire game straight. There were no breaks. I would play offense, and then I would switch over to defense. I played center and offensive tackle, and I would just be on the line for every scrimmage. So we didn't win a whole lot of games, mostly because I think we just got tired. Because most other schools probably had 2 teams or 3, sometimes special teams as well. Anyway, the point is, the coach asked me to prepare a spell list to improve our chances of the next game. And I did. I went home and I researched spells that I thought would be good. The game, it was in 3rd edition at the time, so it was a 3rd edition spell list. And I printed it out. I brought it. I was on the JV team at the time, and I played my JV game, but the varsity team had to go to the field like while we were coming back, so we were not back at our place yet. So actually the varsity coach who asked me for the spell list cut the lock on my locker and grabbed my spell list out of my locker and then left a note saying, I owe you a lock.
Oh my God.
And so he did that, and then we went out to the game to watch it. They still lost.
Oh,
and
God. No.
The reason I told him is that you didn't have a high enough level spellcaster, man. You can't just take a wizard spell book and expect to cast all that stuff.
It's the years of training.
Yeah.
That whole time.
He didn't know that. He didn't know how spellcasting works, which is, I didn't know.
This is as hard as it gets as far as nerding out, though. I know you're like,
all I can think is I would change a few things about the story, but have you thought about
them win?
Have you thought about writing that script?
It's honestly, it's one of my
instead of
stories.
think about the Disney movie of Remember the Dungeon Master. instead of the Titans.
Yeah. Remember the Attack of the Titans.
Yeah.
Remember the wizard.
Remember the spell list.
Yeah,
Oh
remember
my
this one.
God.
I love that because then, like episode 2 or like later on, then you would actually be on the varsity team and you're reading the spell list in the middle of
Yeah.
fucking football.
Just a scroll.
yeah.
Just
Yeah,
a scroll.
instead of
Comprehend
like, 14,
languages.
14,
Doesn't
and
do
like
anything.
instead of that, you're just fucking that's yeah. I love that plot. I want to see that for sure. Netflix
Wish
special.
I knew what I prepared back then.
Yeah, maybe there'd be a scene of you like reading it to the team with a scroll in Elven or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
I
sure.
love it.
Definitely
learn
wasn't
Elven.
just on like computer paper, like white computer paper.
It was probably it was probably a fine pressed paper written with magical ink. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You guys think very highly of me in my props.
Well,
Tea stained computer paper is
Yeah.
really the extent.
I
of
have
the go-to.
tea stained paper somewhere for authenticity for sure.
Yeah,
I've definitely dyed a couple of maps to make it look legit.
yeah.
But that's into props and stuff. That comes with the DMing territory, the dungeon mastering. But I
the
feel like we're circling.
crossover,
Yeah, a
the
little bit.
crossover between those two groups is what we were talking about.
Yeah,
and
no, that's
it's
fair.
larger than you think. I mean, people listened when I was talking, maybe just out of politeness, but you know,
Yeah, maybe.
they
We were
were.
listening just now, so that goes for something.
I remember Joe Manganiello talking about it though when he went on Stephen
Oh.
Colbert like
Yeah.
years ago.
We should call
About
this
how-
the Joe Manganiello podcast because it would be made for him, you know?
Yeah. It would be awesome to be able to talk to him at some point.
We miss you, Joe.
Stretch goals. Joe
Yeah.
Manganiello, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing a Death Saves t-shirt, but I own a lot of
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
No, but he is the ultimate like, hey, I'm a jock, but I'm definitely also a nerd. I play
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons, but also I'll
Also
rip your
love
head
sports.
off. Also, yeah, he's like on one of the biggest current D&D podcasts right now, Critical Role. He was on that for a couple episodes towards the finale of their first season. As Archon the Cruel, and he kind of brought a bunch of light onto that, like, hey, everybody does this, everybody loves D&D. There's a reason why it's been popular for so long. There's a reason why it's awesome.
Well, the thing that Anthony mentioned earlier about being introduced to it through Freaks and Geeks and like the punk rock kind of character being the one to be like to showcase it on that show is really interesting because I think the perspective of like people on D&D has changed a lot over the years, you know, like to this really niche thing that just nobody's heard about, to in the 80s, like it got a lot of negative feedback. You know, this was the same time that like video games were getting called out and like heavy metal was getting called out.
The satanic
panic, yeah.
Yes.
And that was a huge thing during the 80s that led to a lot of changes in D&D and, you know, trying to clean up their, you know, or, you know, change their outward look somewhat.
Yeah.
And then in the 90s, you know, I don't know what it was like in the 90s, kind of a turmoil time. They was switching over from its old company to the company
that's
that
true.
owns it
A bunch
now,
of legal
which
stuff,
is,
but
Wizards of the Coast.
there definitely was this whole connotation with like the heavy metal genre and the satanic stuff because it's like they already didn't like the music and the hair metal, and like there was always this fight against that. And then also these hair metal kids are like going to their friend's basement, and you know there's this preconceived thing of like, oh, they're worshiping other gods and all this stuff, and like this isn't the Christian way. I don't know, but like definitely.
Oh, and there's demons and devils
There's
and
demons
stuff
and
in there.
You don't realize we're smiting the demons with our cool ass.
Yeah, it's the Doom thing. Yeah,
like, it's like we're the good guys. Yeah.
You guys familiar?
Wish to kill.
You guys familiar with the film Airheads?
I know of it. Yeah, not
so
super.
Brendan Fraser, Adam Sandler, and
you mean award-winning actor Brendan Fraser?
Yeah, that's right. That's Academy Award winner, and Steve Buscemi. So those three are a band, and it's a comedy movie, but they basically hijack a radio station and to get their band's music on the station, and they find out that like the FBI releases that Brendan Fraser was actually a nerd back in high school, and there's this whole scene where he's in front of this crowd and he's kind of like he's supposed to be this awesome metal lead singer dude, and he has to come to terms that he was a nerd, and everyone's kind of like, he's like, oh, I used to pick my boogers, I had a great GPA, all these things, and then everyone's like, oh no, but then the crowd goes around and people in the crowd start yelling stuff of like, I was editor of the school magazine, and then some guy's like, I played D&D too, and everyone's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was also another insight to me that there is a lot of crossover between those kind of things, I guess, in a cultural sense.
It's really interesting because like even when I was growing up, it felt like D&D was like a niche thing that like you had to be like super nerdy to like enjoy. Like you were probably like a social outcast if you enjoyed that sort of thing, which I don't think was 100% true all the time, but there was a kind of a public perception of that, and I think that's changed a lot in the last 10 years or so, with fifth ed becoming as popular as it has. I mean, there's a D&D movie. It's a blockbuster movie. It was like number one in the world a couple weeks ago.
So one of my friends who I do a show with, Ant and Rabbit is the name of the show. I'll get my little plug in now. Is my buddy Jameson Rabbit, who for the last 10 years has hosted a show called Real Reviews, where he goes to movies for free to review movies. He goes to hundreds of movies a year, and at the end of the year, he compiles his lists, and he literally has 1 through 200 something of all the movies that he went to see ranked in order. He reviews them all on his TV show. Check out Real Reviews.
But I want to know.
I saw his thing of his, at least just a blurb of his review of Dungeons and Dragons, was that pleasantly surprised. And that seems to be kind of a common theme. And this movie just came out, in the last 2 weeks?
Couple weeks ago,
that's kind of I feel like that's a kind of a continuing theme that I'm seeing from people's reactions to the D&D movie. Have either of you guys seen it yet?
I watched it the weekend it came out, because for me, it's one of those things where I didn't want it to get spoiled for me. And
I know the feeling.
And it was one of those things where it's like, this is near and dear to my heart, so I have to go see it as soon as possible. I tried to get the D20 like popcorn bucket, which was like a plastic bucket, limited edition thing that popcorn came in. They were sold out already, unfortunately, but
I believe it.
But your effort was there, and
I could have bought one. I could still have bought one online, but it's like, that's not as cool. I want to do it while I'm watching a movie.
Yeah, you want to be like, this is so cool, I'm holding this.
Yeah, it's just a plastic bucket at that point.
I haven't seen it yet. I don't like to see movies opening weekend or even like a couple of weeks. I usually wait so I can have an empty theater. Because people, right?
That's so funny. I'm an empty theater guy as well, actually.
Love empty theaters. We always did empty theaters. We'd see movies like the last weekend they were in the theater, because it's like there's me and then my grandparents or my brother and my sister and one other couple way over there that I can't even see. And
I don't like a full theater all the time, but sometimes it's kind of nice.
You have to. And for Star Wars, it was, if a friend said he had 2 tickets, I'm like, yeah, I'll go opening weekend. I don't care. You already got the tickets, and I get to see it and not get spoiled. Perfect. But typically, and I'm cool with going by myself, no problem there. I will sit in the back row of an empty theater, and I have a great time. I'm an only child. Like, no big deal for me. Like, I love it.
Yeah, that's great.
So, all right. So, Tyler, you're waiting until the crowds die down a little bit.
Yeah, and then I'm waiting for Sophia's going to probably see with me too, but she's got to definitely build the hype. We talk about D&D all the time, and it can definitely, like, I don't have a limit on the amount of D&D that I can talk usually, but she definitely has a capacity, which is great, and the capacity has definitely grown recently. But I want her to be like ready to see this movie and ready to geek out about the things that it got right, because I hear that it's solid for people who are into it, people that aren't really into it. I hear that, if you haven't seen the movie yet, go see it. I would say,
from a D&D fan who's going to be biased, it's still a good movie, from like a D&D fan perspective. It's also not a flawless,
Masterpiece of a
masterpiece. It's definitely got some plot holes to
Would
it.
that be the American accents?
I'm not gonna give them. It's a fantasy world. Dude, they can have American accents. They can have French accents. They can have any accents they want. It's made up. How do you kill a vampire?
Garlic and crosses.
It doesn't matter. They're made up. You can kill them however you want. There doesn't matter.
You walked into that one, man. He's been preparing that one
I
for
am
weeks.
think that we just end the show right there.
I'm sorry to dunk on you.
No, that was great. That's great. I accept it.
That's better
And
than made up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tyler, tell us who Sophia is.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a great point. Sophia is my wife. We have been married since 2015, which means going on 8 years in August.
So you're
We
in your
met in high
fifth
school.
edition.
I'm in
Yeah.
my 5th edition of marriage.
Yeah.
It's still D&D.
Fifth edition is older than your marriage. Think about that.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. I thought about it for 0.5 seconds. Cool. Yeah, we were high school sweethearts. Met in 2011. Oh no, met in 2008. We were children and started dating in senior year, and been doing okay. Moved up to Oregon on our little lonesome with the help of some grandparents. Yeah, it's a good question. I forget I can't just yell names into the abyss and expect everyone to know.
You can't just introduce characters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can't just introduce characters. You see a shorter. Yeah, I'm not going to describe my wife.
It's actually a good segue for something I wanted to ask. Is part of this? I had an idea this morning. Was it this morning? Anyway, doesn't matter. Of on this podcast doing like short form RPG playing with you involved, Anthony. If you're interested in that, at some point. I mean, I don't have to ask Tyler because I'm sure he's down. But doing short
Hard
form
pass.
like.
I didn't
Okay,
make
maybe it won't work. I don't know.
Hard pass. I'll leave the call, and you
Yeah.
guys can definitely go play your game. On there.
Just short examples of what RPGs can be.
Yeah, and I think it'd be great as like in this form of like over the course maybe of a couple episodes, we slowly develop a very basic character and character sheet that tells you all of your stats, all of your abilities that you do, and you choose a class and you choose your race and all that stuff. Not to say it's like,
Racist?
really particular about racist or whatever, but they're legit different races of humanoids in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, it's one of
Could you
the
give us
things.
3 examples?
Yeah, sure. So we definitely talked about Elvish earlier. So they're the elves. Think about Legolas and Lord of the Rings. It's a very easy way to put it. Equivalent to Legolas is the dwarves. Think Gimli, the typically shorter, bearded folk, typically bearded. I don't want to generalize all dwarves.
That's a good generalization of dwarves, though. If they weren't
fair.
short and bearded, they're straying
It might
pretty
be
far.
it might be something else. And then think about Frodo and how he's a halfling. He's a they call him Shire folk or halfling, but that's one of the races in D&D as well.
I have an interesting tidbit about that historical tidbit. The reason that they're called halflings is because they were originally called hobbits, and the Lord of the Rings, like the Tolkien estate, sued D&D and said you can't say that, and they had a big legal battle about what they can and can't say in D&D, and they determined that elves, dwarves, orcs, those are all things that have existed in public consciousness prior to the introduction of those things by Tolkien. But hobbits, that's his own creation. So you can't say hobbit. So you got to say something else, and they chose.
Once was a hobbit who lived in a
but
hole.
they were literally hobbits in the beginning. They were big Tolkien nerds. So
I love
anything,
that.
yeah.
I think a future episode about some of the different lawsuits would be very interesting to do, kind of a deep dive.
Honestly, they've gone through a lot.
They've gone through a lot of stuff.
Maybe a series, perhaps.
Yeah,
a series of just D&D lawsuits. Deep dive.
Yeah. Appendix N is a table in one of the original guides of D&D that is inspirational reading. Where Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson got their inspiration from for creating the world of D&D. And it includes things like Tolkien and Michael Moorcock and all sorts of other other things there.
Say that name again.
That's
Did you just
inappropriate.
drop your own name?
That's
Did you just drop your
inappropriate.
own
Oh,
screen name on accident?
oops.
Michael Moorcock, is that what you
Yeah.
said?
Yeah, I think that's like the Eternal Champion. I haven't read all of them. Some of them are hard to get into. The
You're
old
losing me
fantasy.
now, honestly. Yeah.
All right.
Maybe
I'll
I'm just
stop
getting
talking.
lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 beers in.
I'm getting lost in the sauce. Yeah,
Yeah.
Hell
Easy
yeah.
sauce
the
to get lost in.
history sauce.
There's definitely a future history beach episode. We just sit on
I'd
the
love
beach.
to talk about it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah,
There's a whole lot of history and legality in D&D, and it's a mess. But there's a whole lot of races too, and they keep adding more, and there's keep adding more customization options for characters. So I
yeah.
would love to make you a little character sheet over time, and then occasionally we'll say like, "Oh, that's a good question, Anthony. Let's put it to an example." And we roll
That's
a dice,
helpful.
and you look at your character sheet and be like, "Oh, my strength is +2, so I add this number," and then we like
Yeah. And what does that mean?
show you what an athletics check
Yeah.
means.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Tyler,
that
what are
sounds
your top 3 races in D&D? The whole anyway.
Wow.
Is this racially insensitive?
Is this a racist
Well,
question?
I think that they might be in future editions of D&D be trying to be more sensitive. The race class thing has been like something that has been in the game since the 70s, which may not continue to be used in future edition of D&D because of cultural
It
sensitivity,
may be
which is
background
fine. Yeah,
or ear shape, but then you're categorized by something
background
else.
or species is some
Species, right?
options that they're choosing,
Yeah.
which means that if it changes the species, then eating an elf isn't cannibalism anymore, which means it's fine. Maybe the lizard folk were right all along,
Yeah, for eating the
Anyway,
elves. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't really have a top 3, but the funniest thing is that I usually choose humans. I
you
choose
do.
basic generic humans because usually what I do with my characters is I create a concept that I don't live in my normal day-to-day life, and I try to explore that by role playing as that idea.
Yeah.
So I like to play suffer puppets, they're called, and it's characters who have just like gone through hell, just gone through the worst of circumstances. What would it be like if I had gone through this circumstance? What kind of person would I be? And
And
then I role
continue
play
to
that
seek
on the
that
table.
out too.
I love that. That seems to me like a good, like cerebral puzzle in some ways.
It
Of like,
is. It's so fun.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I told you I did theater in high school. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like you get to you only through lines and little stage direction do you get to try to understand and grasp a character and put something behind it. But this one, you are creating every inch of this character, and then the results of what they can do come out in dice by what you roll.
Yeah. And sometimes the dice don't always live up to your idea of your character in your head sometimes, which is a challenge in and of itself.
Yeah,
for
but
sure.
like I said, people trip and people fall and people stumble along the way. Just it makes it more realistic when you're
Yeah.
not just this demigod who's walking amongst the plains, smiting everything that he sees.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're a dork who met some friends at a tavern and decided to go kill some rats. That's what happened, and now you're here.
A dork and an orc.
A dork and an orc.
Ah, man. Is it too bad to is it too late to change our podcast name to Dork and Orc?
Dork and orcs. Thanks, I hate it.
I guess so. All right, I'm cracking open another one. Round two. This is a limited release from Deschutes Brewing, Twilight, which is sort of on brand for D&D podcast, I guess. There's a lot of crossover between Twilight fans and
There's
D&D
a lot of stuff
fans,
about
probably.
the sun and the moon and I'm the god of death and all this stuff. So yeah,
I hope you guys got that on the audio.
I definitely got that. Thanks. Yeah, it was crisp. It sounds delicious. I didn't get a good slurp out of you though, but
I wouldn't do that. No, I'm not gonna slurp.
I wouldn't mind a quick slurp. There we go. That sounded good. That wasn't too bad.
That's good. Yeah, well done.
That sounded like an enjoyment of a beverage, not so much I'm a disgusting being who needs to just suck on some life juice.
All right, we need to move on to our next topic quickly.
You mentioned Freaks and Geeks. I definitely wanted to talk about some other great introductory to D&D things. just through like pop media and stuff like that. We talked about a little bit. I touched on Critical Role. That's like the big heavy. It's like they're voice actors playing D&D. They're just running through the game. Here are their characters. Here's what they're doing. And it's
Their own
epic
TV show.
because they're on. They have an animated TV show coming out with more shows. They're super great. You can find them on basically everywhere. I watched them on YouTube first, on Spotify now, the podcast app, wherever.
Which
It's
is
wild.
interesting because wasn't that a Pathfinder game
It was
originally?
originally a home game. They only played amongst themselves as voice actor friends. And then one person invited them, hey, I have this show, Geek and Sundry. It was Felicia Day invited them to Geek and Sundry, said, like, I want to display that you guys as voice actors are playing D&D. They played one episode and everyone was like, that was really entertaining. I want to know what happens to all your characters. Can you come back for another episode? And now they are like 400 plus episodes in.
My God.
One of the biggest D&D names out there right now.
Yeah.
Huge podcast, spin-off shows, animated shows and specials, more coming along the way. Like, huge.
Are you
Now, speaking of
are you in
theaters, they
anime?
actually played it, some of their newest season was displaying at like IMAX theaters or something like that.
Yeah.
Just to like show their first episode and bring crowds to theaters because of like a shared camaraderie. Like, they're huge now. What were you gonna ask, Michael? I'm sorry.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I tried to anyway. Anthony, are you a anime fan at all?
A smooth transition, Michael. Thanks.
I have a point to make here.
Okay. Yeah. Make.
The short
And it
answer,
might
I
not land.
guess, would be no. But
Then-
so
then
my
never mind.
girlfriend is moving on.
This is not
Short
gonna
answer,
land.
no. Short answer, no.
Oh.
But I still want to hear your answer to that.
I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay, so the short answer for anime is no. There are things that are nerdy that I get into, and some also would say, like, friends of mine who also played sports view me as nerdy about them, just kind of in a different way, in a different level.
Yeah.
So there
We
are
can
other
talk
things
about
that I
sports nerds too.
yeah, and those are other things that I absolutely nerd out about. Anime is not one of them, but I'd say I'm more open now to watching them than ever. And my girlfriend is really into the Studio Ghibli. I saw Ponyo or something like that within the last few months.
Ponyo. Yeah.
Ponyo, and
Ponyo's cute.
awesome film. And there was
You can't go
very
wrong with Ghibli.
famous actors who I heard their, like, I think that's something that was easy for me to tap into because I think Liam Neeson and some other famous actors that I'm familiar with, I heard them. And
that was a surprising thing for me too, because I just watched that one recently. I didn't watch it as a kid, but I had just watched that one recently, and yeah, hearing Liam Neeson's voice, I think in that one was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then my favorite, or in the conversation for my favorite wrestler of all time, is Jushin Thunder Liger, is a Japanese wrestler whose character and everything is really based off an 80s Japanese anime. So that
Which
is I think it's called Jushin Thunder Liger. I'm not certain, but that's who, like, he has this mask with horns and hair and looks like a Power Ranger, to be quite honest. But it's something special, and we can get into the wrestling thing later, but that's kind of, those are a few of my, I guess, gateways and doorways into the world of anime, which I'm sure there are many crossovers into the nerd kingdom, between D&D and anime.
Yeah, there can be.
Beyond like Vox Machina or Machina, I don't know that many. I mean, and the D&D animated cartoon, which
Vox
was
Machina is like the first season of Critical Role. That's the name of their campaign group.
And also the name of the TV show, the animated TV show. But beyond that, and the like 80s cartoon, the D&D like official 80s cartoon, there aren't that many like D&D related things. I mean, I think a really good anime that does a good job at just like generic fantasy is Goblin Slayer. But that one's a hard one to get into because there's some triggering sort of stuff in the very first episode. So going into that one is
that's why they put it in the first episode for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless you
And
know about
there's a couple other bits in subsequent episodes too, but
Sure.
I still think it does a good job of showing off generic fantasy. But anyway, I was just gonna say Critical Role feels very much like, and this probably isn't gonna land for either of you guys, but it feels
fantasy.
very much like the One Piece of D&D.
I'm aware
Like
of the One Piece meme.
the One
One
Piece
Piece
meme is
goes on
there's
forever.
1,000
Yeah,
episodes of One Piece, and it feels like there's 1,000 episodes of Critical Role, which makes it a little difficult to.
I get that.
I'm not a
I started before there were like 500 episodes. I started when season 1 was still halfway through, and
yeah,
so I've been playing catch up forever. But
yeah.
considering that each episode of Critical Role is 3 to 4 hours long, I
It's very
understand why it seems like the One Piece problem, where it's like you have this impossible puzzle, you're never going to solve it. It's a
yeah,
1,000 episodes.
a
Yeah,
1,000 hours of
1,000
content.
hours
You know,
content.
yeah.
1,000. Uh-huh. And
Uh,
growing.
I want to know, but I'm fine with also just
Yeah.
watching from afar.
Sitting at the back burner.
Yeah,
Yeah. I get now why you brought up
cultural osmosis.
yeah. The other thing I wanted to plug was a couple of like really easy to watch episodes of one of them was Community. They have 2 D&D episodes. One of them definitely got canceled like on a lot of different platforms.
That's the one
Uh,
I've seen,
yeah,
which
yeah,
I totally agree. Absolutely in love with it. It's been years since I've seen it, but
yeah.
it's on season 2, and it's funny when I look up Community right now is streaming on Netflix, and it says very specifically in parentheses at the end of the blurb on Netflix about what Community is and what it's all about. It says every episode except one episode in season 2. It doesn't say what it is. It just
Oh,
says
wow.
that it's the whole series except there's one that we don't have, and
Yeah,
that's of course
yeah.
the D&D
But
episode.
it does a good job of capturing, except for that part, capturing the spirit of D&D and what D&D like kind of feels like, of just like it's kind of chaotic, but it also like has some deeper meaning because you're putting your own meaning into it. It's basically like it goes back to human basics of like, oh, we're just storytelling and we're just having a good time. But the Community episode makes it hilarious, easy to watch, super fun. Another really good episode to plug is from IT Crowd. They have a D&D episode that I always watch. Sophia put on once in a while, and I walk in on. So funny because it's just like these people who like they're not really into it, and then at the end of the episode they're super into it, and they're like crying at their characters' choices and stuff like that, and realizing that they're super hard into the role play. Definitely try to check out. I don't know what season, but the IT Crowds episode of D&D.
I will check that out. That's also streaming on Netflix at the moment.
Yes, yeah. It's still on Netflix right now. Definitely try to find that one. Google that one. It's really great.
Another thing, if you're looking for D&D in the media, there's Futurama made a like short movie or direct to video movie or something called Bender's Game, which has a lot of D&D allusions in it. And also in one of the episodes of Futurama, they have Gary Gygax show up
That's
as a
true.
character alongside like I don't know Ralph Nader or something.
Yeah, he's in some
They have to,
band.
like
I
save.
remember.
They have to save the universe or something. I
Yeah,
don't remember.
yeah. And then they
But
get sent to the end of time, and so they're like, "Ah, man, how do we do this? I guess we'll just play D&D for the rest of eternity." And they
yeah,
start rolling dice, just like our vibe check. It's just like mindless.
there's a gag from that episode that I love, which is like Gary Gygax is like, and this is Gary Gygax. They're introducing him, and he's like, "Hi, it's nice to meet you."
Oh,
Roll
so
this-
good. So
Yeah.
good.
Roll this answer.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I would imagine with the Ralph Nader reference that was very early 2000s.
Yeah.
Futurama stuff.
Episode.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it was still pretty early Futurama. I
I
don't
would
remember
guess
when.
so.
Yeah, but I love that gag. I think about that a lot. It lives rent free in my brain.
I'm curious, Anthony, like as far as us getting into the sports of it all, what are some things that maybe we can check out? Because I'm not a guy that like has cable in my house. I have like Netflix and typical streaming devices and stuff like that. What are some things that I could do to try to like get into sports?
So I think in some ways it's so you already sort of have a relationship with baseball, right?
Yeah.
Are there baseball, and you've already heard me during the show mention different movies that I feel like pertain to what we're talking about, whether
Mm.
that be, Michael brought up Inglorious Bastards, or I talked about Airheads. Are there baseball movies that you're into?
Off the top of my
Moneyball.
head, I did
Also,
watch Moneyball.
so I'll say The Sandlot to me is not just the best
course.
baseball movie. To me,
Yeah.
that's the best kids movie. And like when I write out my
Yeah.
top 10 or whatever, my list of movies all time, Sandlot's in my top 5. And
Yeah.
it is my favorite sports movie. It's my favorite baseball movie. It's my favorite kids movie. Because
That's great.
I think it's universal. I think it transcends all of those different things or genres.
Yeah.
It's also one of the greatest 90s movies. However, like any way you want to split it,
Yeah.
like I think Sandlot and finding movies that you're interested in that can help you like situationally, I guess, in certain ways. And like it's around this time, baseball just started a couple weeks ago, that I start getting into. Like just last night I was looking for The Sandlot or Major League.
Nice. Yeah.
Other movies that are great movies that might just be a comedy that have baseball elements, A League of Their Own. There's so many things. So I think finding other mediums that you're interested in that can kind of be a little bit of a crossover to get you more interest in it. That's
Mighty
a big
Ducks.
one. Yeah, see, Mighty
Yeah.
Ducks. That's a great one. That's
It's been a
another
while.
one.
Remember
Love
the
Mighty
Titans.
Ducks. Remember the
Yeah.
Titans we talked about?
Yeah.
Mighty Ducks to me has such an interesting trajectory, but I like all three of at least those first three movies. I haven't watched the new series over the last
I
2
don't
years
know.
that Disney
Yeah.
Channel put out, but especially the first Mighty Ducks movie was huge for me as a kid, and D2 and D3 are both good movies. It's just interesting the trajectory there. Like at first they're just a kids pee-wee team that sucks, that sort of becomes good or good enough to like each other. Then in the second movie, they go to being junior Olympic athletes. And then in the third one, they don't make their varsity team.
Wow.
Exactly. It
Like
makes
a new
no sense.
roster of kids,
Amazing.
just every year, right? Yeah, I
Amazing.
don't know.
It's like, they're playing Iceland for a gold medal game, and then they're not making their high school team, basically, or they're
That
not
sounds
quite
accurate.
making. Yeah.
That seems accurate for my experience with football teams sometimes, or just like teams in general, where like one year it seems like they can't do anything wrong. They're on top of the world, and then maybe a year or two later they just can't pull it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The great parody, and that's why every year is, you just never know who's the worst team last year could be a top team the next year, and I think that's one of the fun things. And it might be even be the same team that just needed to struggle, or I don't know, there's so many different fun things, I guess. But yeah, I guess short answer, Tyler, that's kind of that would be something that I think can help one get interested or re-interested in something.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Sandlot wasn't on the front of my mind, but it was definitely on the back of my mind. Now, once you mentioned it, I'm like, oh yeah, love that movie. It's so good.
Exactly.
But
Legendary.
like, made me think about like The Blind Side. Like, I really don't understand the football of it all, but I think it's great storytelling.
Yep.
And
that's pretty legit to what the real story was.
Waterboy.
Waterboy's a lot of fun.
This movie gets you into football, gets you into the spirit.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The Replacements to me is one of the it's one of the more underrated and overlooked sports movies. It's Keanu Reeves and Gene Hackman. And it is absolutely hilarious. You don't have to like football to like this movie. It's a great story, and it's very funny, and it's well told. It's a well-paced movie. The Replacements, I think, is a very, very good movie. And if you like Keanu Reeves, he's the main character. So
that's great.
Yeah, lots of fun there. So that's one I would definitely check out.
What's the other one? Baseball movie, The Benchwarmers. I watched that religiously as a kid with
David Spade, John Heater.
Yeah, oh yeah. Hilarious. I mean, stupid hilarious, but definitely for 2006 when it came out.
Yeah, Nick Swardson is in that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
they're great.
Absolutely great Benchwarmers. I remember seeing that in theaters. It's a lot of fun. And it's it's a Happy Madison production, I believe. It's like, I don't think think Adam Sandler's in it, but he was. It's his company.
It's got the
I
Rob
got to talk
Schneider and the
about one
Steven
of
Spade.
some of the biggest like crossover between nerd culture and sports culture.
Yeah.
Is what I'm blanking on the name of it now, but I think when I describe it, you'll be able to nail it. It's a show about fantasy, like the league. It's the league.
Yep.
I know a lot of my friends who are sports fanatics and also D&D nerds or just nerds in general love the league. I've seen it a bit and it's hilarious. And I feel like that was the other thing is like fantasy sports of like fantasy football, baseball, basketball, whatever can can be sort of like gamify it on a personal level
Without a
for
doubt.
you as a sports watcher,
Yes.
because like I know that very casually I'll like watching sports, but a friend of mine got me into a fantasy football league, and then I was like, yeah, when my guy, that's my guy on the screen,
Yeah,
who's making the
you own
points for
him.
me,
Yeah,
I don't know about owning people, but
you own him now.
yeah,
But it's the
I'm
same with
rooting
cheering
for
when
him.
you get a natural 20. When you roll a 20 on a
Yeah,
20 sided, it's the
yeah,
cheering. It's the I waited for this, or like I was hoping this would happen kind of
yeah.
thing. Or
Well, being a part of something that's
Personal victory.
bigger than
yeah,
yourself,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the cool part too. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think that's a big appeal of sports that I've seen from the outside of just
Sure.
like people could just talk instantly about it because you walked in wearing a jersey that said so and
yeah,
so's name
Yes.
on it.
Yeah.
yeah,
Or you're wearing the opposite team's jersey, and then you can instantly talk about talk about it, but in a different light.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of getting there now with some nerd cultures because I'll see someone wearing a Critical Role T-shirt. I'll be like, "That's a cool T-shirt. I know what that is." And it's kind of like when people used to wear like a little Star Trek logo or something. And it's just like I know what that is because I watched that
Right.
show, or
Yeah.
Star Wars shirt and be able to nerd out about it. Definitely love it. Definitely love the nerding out of all these things. It's super cool.
Exactly. No, I think there's a lot of, and us three will get to see a lot of the parallels, I think, between the things that we're into and why we love them so much and what brings people together over them. I think there's a lot of similarities and a lot more crossover than we might, or to the naked eye, that someone might not understand if they're only into one of the two.
Should we start a
That's fair.
fantasy league? Just the three of us? Is that something we could do?
You talking about elves and shit?
I'm
Yeah,
talking
I'm
about
talking about
elves.
the League of Dark Elves.
Yeah. No, like what's like fantasy football,
Sure.
baseball, something.
Sure. Yeah.
Can we do just three of us? Would that be something doable?
I would maybe want to expand a little bit, but I think we could put something together.
Yeah, I don't think
So
there would be enough people.
baseball is very hard for even baseball fans to like fantasy
Okay.
baseball. I ran a league for a decade, and it is something
And
I
not
really
for
enjoy,
money.
but
I'm not interested in doing it for
that's
money.
fine.
Just for bragging rights.
Yeah, I think football is the one that is the biggest crapshoot that my mom can draft a team not knowing anybody and be totally fine kicking my ass
Yeah.
Yeah.
2-3 times a year. Like, you just really don't know. That's the term, and it's a movie as well, the Any Given Sunday, because you have no idea who's going to beat who and who's going to show up to play and who isn't. So
Yeah.
That's cool.
yeah.
I did that for a couple of years, and you're right. Any given Sunday can make or break you. Though I did have I had like 11 out of 12 the first year, and I think I made my way up to like middle of the pack just by paying attention. So that's
That's the
that was
most
pretty good.
important thing, is just
Yeah.
paying a little bit of attention and knowing. Yeah, it's crazy
Yeah.
how you just have to know like who's healthy, and if they're
Yeah.
playing, you
Well,
might get lucky.
Yeah.
So rub me in a little bit. I think it's like your person can score points kind of based on doing things or being
Yeah.
present or like
Yes.
catching the ball or
There's
tackling a
different
guy.
ways.
Yeah.
There's
So
different ways that it's scored, but generally when your players are doing well, they're catching the ball, they're the ones scoring the points. It's very individual based. Then that's good. And the more common way for defense players is just you choose a team as far as I know. And you can
Correct.
correct me at
Correct.
any time. Yeah.
Yep.
But we played individual defensive players.
That's very tough.
Yeah. Which was nice sometimes because if you got a really good, like defensive tackle or linebacker or something, he could make you the lion's share of your points in a week,
Sure.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
that's
really.
one way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yards, basically yards and points. And then sometimes leagues will do, you might get a point or a half a point for how many times your player catches the ball. So
Yeah.
a player who gets 50 to 80 to 100 catches, those are all a point or a half a
Adding up.
point without them
Yeah.
even running anywhere or scoring a touchdown. It's
Yeah.
literally just them catching the ball.
Different things.
So
Yeah.
sometimes that can be and that kind of changes the strategy of, oh, I want to go after guys who
Yeah.
get a bunch of catches as opposed
Yeah.
to a quarterback who is going to be throwing the ball. He's not going to be catching at all.
Yeah.
And how just the scoring of the leagues, which
Yeah.
I'm sure there's those kind of differences and maybe the different additions of in ways of D&D perhaps.
Oh, taking
Oh, yeah,
actions
100%.
to getting
Yeah.
points, experience points, to getting to winning, to getting better and then winning. Yeah,
Oh man, I
that's,
have
thought you were talking
big
about D&D this
opinions.
whole time.
I got big opinions on how you should be, like, how the rewards should be issued in a RPG. It's a huge sticking point for me.
That's a
Hell
good
yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rewards.
Well, fellas, how do we feel?
Feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
I feel like we're circling the drain a little bit.
Okay.
You know?
All right. Well, Michael, is there anything you want to pimp or plug before we get out of here?
I want to talk about the game that has been the thing that I've been obsessing about over the last week, which is a game. It's a video game called Hold Fast: Nations at War. It's a PC game, and it's set in Napoleonic times, so like early 1800s. And it's like just a shooter, but you're playing with muskets against other people with muskets and cannons
Bayonets.
and bayonets. Uh, and it's got a really interesting community, I would say. And it's actually a fairly old game, but still has a ton of like dedicated people. Like any given night I've wanted to go play that. There's been 150, at least one server playing dedicated to it. So it's fun. It's not too expensive if you can play PC games, and I would recommend that.
Hell yeah. All right. What about you, Tyler?
My plug is going to be something that Michael recommended me. It's for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and it is a supplement of more and more monsters for dungeon masters to use against their players. It's called the Creature Codex. It's a 5th edition supplement, and inside is literally just spell blocks and stat blocks of different D&D monsters that you can plug into your games. This is mostly right now going to be for all of our DMs out there listening, but
by Kobold Press, I believe, correct?
By Kobold Press, a popular D&D supplement creator, amongst other things. This is a great book. I've already been running quite a few monsters out of it, and getting to throw things on the table that people who have played a lot of D&D are not used to seeing. Common problem I have, like with Michael or with my friends online, they've gone through the monster manual over here 100 times over and know that, certain vulnerabilities for certain monsters are
I know how to kill a vampire.
You know how to kill a vampire, but in the game, not just because they're made up. But this has all kinds of unique and original creations that I like to surprise the players with. So check out the Creature Codex by Kobold Press.
Hell yeah. For me, wrapping things up, I guess I want to. Something I talked about earlier was my buddy Jameson Rabbit. Him and I have a podcast, and Rabbit. You can check that out on Frony Radio, or his show Real Reviews. Like I said, if you're into movies, Jameson has a great voice. He's seen any movie that you can think of, whether it be something he found on YouTube from in French or anything that's a major release now. I would definitely check out Real Reviews. He's got a very unique voice and just knows movies on a whole nother level. And I would definitely check out Real Reviews with Jameson Rabbit.
I think I will.
Hell yeah.
That sounds great.
All right. Well, that does it for the pilot episode of Athletics Check. We appreciate you guys checking us out, and we look forward to doing another one soon. And we hope you check us out again. And please like and subscribe, follow our YouTube channel, all that good stuff.
Leave a review.
Please do. Please do. For Michael and Tyler, I am Anthony. We'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.